I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming. There's some seats up front, don't be shy. There's some seats over there by the window. So we start with some introductions. I'll start. I'm Valerie Chow. I use she, her pronouns. I work at the Haas Center for Public Service. I'm the Senior Program Director of the Cardinal Porter team, which means that we are in charge of the summer fellowship opportunities for Schneider. So that is me if you have questions about the summer opportunities. And Ben is online, and I will forward to Ben right now to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Weissman. I'm the Program Director on the Cardinal Careers team here at the Haas Center, which means that I direct the Schneider Fellowship that is 1 year in length, alongside the Gardner Fellowship, Board Fellowship, Community Impact Fellowship. That's sort of my fellowship plate. So please talk to me if you have questions about the year-long Schneider Fellowship, as well as any of those other year-long fellowship programs that seek to set you up in a public service job after graduating from Stanford.
And then Casey, would you like to do a quick introduction?
Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Love. I work for the Natural Resources Defense Council. I am the program manager for the summer internship program, as well as the 1-year fellowship program. If you have any questions about the opportunities that we have, I'd be happy to assist you.
And Bridie, you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, I'm Bridie, and I served as a Schneider Fellow last summer with NRDC, so I'll be speaking about my experience a little bit.
Great. So I guess we can start with some overview of the Schneider program as the slides load. Okay, so the summer program is 12 weeks, full-time, 35 to 40 hours a week. We have 6 partner host organizations this year that are hiring Schneider Fellows. They're the same as last year if you were here last year. The stipend is a flat $10,000 stipend. And then there is up to $1,500 additional for if you're doing some professional traveling over the summer. So that is kind of the structure. You have to work for 12 weeks full time. And then Ben, you want to talk about the 1 year?
Yeah, for sure. So, and the 1 year Schneider Fellowship program is a full year, full 12 months, full-time work. Whereas a lot of the fellowships, a lot of the things that I oversee have to do with a post-Stanford thing. You can actually apply to this at any point in a degree program, but it is a full year commitment that you would be asked to focus on this role. So it is commonly applied to in one's final academic year. That is to say, just before graduating to begin just after that, summer or fall. It is stipend to be determined by experience, but there's precedent for being about $65K plus benefits. Speaking of professional travel-related expenses of the summer, there has been a pretty generous professional development stipend offered by NRDC to fellows in the past in the 1 year program.
So I'll go next with the application deadline for both summer and 1 year is January 28, 2025. So it's a couple of weeks later than last year. So you have a little bit more time this year to get it in. And I'll talk about the summer, like what the application looks like. It's actually a little bit different depending on the org. 2 organizations are going to ask you to have 3 short essay questions. They're very short, 1 paragraph each. And then the rest are going to ask for cover letters, 1 specific cover letter per the position that you're applying to. And then everybody's going to ask for a resume and a transcript. And then for the summer positions, even easier this year, only U.S. Green Building Council is asking for 2 reference names. So you just have to write down their name, and then they could be called. If you're a finalist, they might check your references that way, but there's no letters required. It's just the 2 names for that one org. The other orgs don't even need references this year. So that's kind of the application situation. Most of them are open already. There's a link over there on the whiteboard to the Schneider homepage. If you go there, you will see the applications. And then Ben, you want to talk about the 1 year?
Yeah, so slight differences. So the resume, transcript, those are standard across. There are 3 short essay questions for the 1 year application, which are as long, or in addition to 2 letters of recommendation that are asked. So instead of references, we're asking that you have already reached out to, communicated with someone that you would want to write one of those letters, and then they would submit them on your behalf. The one final ask is for a writing sample. This really can be from a wide range of things. The expectation or the hope is that when NRDC is reviewing your materials, that they can get a sense of your sort of academic writing. It could be an excerpt of something larger, something persuasive, organized, and written solely by you. That's sort of the idea there.
And then in terms of the selection timeline, application deadline again, January 28th, put that on your calendar. No extensions. We're pretty firm with that. Interviews will take place the week of February 18th or so, and then offers will be made by early March. And then the summer placements will start either basically the first 2 weeks of summer, either June 16th or 17th, or the following Monday, June 23rd, because you have to work for 12 weeks. So we do require that you start earlier. And then I guess for the 1 year, it's August, September start date.
Yeah. And I'll just briefly say that exact start date for the 1 year positions is something that would be determined between you, the fellow, and NRDC. And that could be, it's a little bit negotiable depending upon your managers and things like that. It is outside of our hands as the Haas Center.
So just we've already talked about some of this. You can apply to as many opportunities as you want. You can apply to all of the summer opportunities. For the ones with multiple opportunities, you can, for summer, like for example, you see Environmental Defense Fund has 9 positions and NRDC has 7 positions. You can rank up to 3 each for those organizations, but you can apply to all of the boards if you want. You're so inclined, you can. The applications are similar, but not identical. As I said, some are cover letters and some are short, very short paragraph essays for the summer. References, only the one for USGBC will require 2 names. And then we will collect the applications and send them to the partner orgs. So we don't actually review them at the Haas Center. We let the organization select. Anything to add, Ben?
Just doubling down on that in terms of this process, in terms of what we outlined in terms of interviews and all that, we, the Haas Center, very much are the entity that is promoting and collecting these applications. So if you do have questions about the applications themselves, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We try to make the resources that we're sharing out as clear as possible. But yes, that is why the deadlines are hard as well, because we need a cutoff date in order to send that pool of applications so that NRDC and other agencies, other NGOs can go through their review processes and decide on who they might want to interview.
So these are the partners for the summer. These are the positions that they have, how many for each. All enrolled Stanford students are eligible for Schneider for the summer. So you can be an undergrad, you can be a grad student. Doctoral students are not eligible for RMI. That's the only one that's different. But if you're a doctoral student, you're eligible for the rest of them. So it's quite open. So, just so you know, like you get all levels of students applying for these. Yeah.
Does that include graduates and years too?
Yeah, everybody welcome for Schneider. Very open. Anything else to add, Ben?
Yeah, you'll notice 2+ next to the 1Y of 1 year for positions. I don't have an exact number yet. I don't yet have job descriptions, so we're not yet actually accepting applications. But you've been in attendance here. If you're on my other lists, you will be among the first to know once I do. 2+ is hopeful. We had 2 fellows last year and 2 fellows the year before and 4 the year before that. It has to do a little bit with funding cycles and things like that. So to be determined, but more to come.
Yeah, and all the summer positions are online. So if you want to read through them, just to give you a snapshot, EDF has stuff ranging from working for climate data science to Japan fisheries. NRDC has stuff on fossil fuels and to global energy transition, et cetera, et cetera. So there's something for everyone. There's communications positions, there's very technical positions. So check them all out and apply to the ones that you're interested in. Come on in, sit down. And then I'm going to throw it to Bridie. Bridie's going to talk about her fellowship experience at the NRDC this past summer.
Yeah,
Okay, hi, I'm Bridie Sig. I am a senior studying Earth Systems and minoring in computer science. And last summer, I worked with NRDC on their climate test team as a Schneider Fellow. And I want to talk a little bit about first what the application process looked like for me, and then about my position specifically. So I actually applied to a Schneider Fellowship also as a sophomore and did not receive the position, and then applied again last year as a junior and received a position within NRDC for the following summer. So what the difference between those two application cycles looked like for me is putting a lot more prep work in for my junior year. So the Career Ed Center has a lot of resources that I used extensively last year when going through the application cycle, including having them look over my resume, read over my cover letter, do interview prep, and all of that I think really led into me being able to get the position within NRDC this last summer. So specifically what I was doing within NRDC was working on their climate test team, which was a team made up of 2 staff scientists that are working on what's called the climate test tool. And that was a tool that looks into quantifying the impact of fossil fuel infrastructure projects on our ability to reach future climate goals. So I don't think this is a fellowship that's offered again this year, but there are a lot of the fellows were working with the same managers as I was last summer, even under different positions. And what my work looked like, I was working out of the Washington, D.C. office, which was really incredible. They're on a hybrid schedule, but a lot more people, they're transitioning to more in person. So it's still hybrid, but a lot more people will be in the office this coming summer. And I was living in DC and was able to work about 3 days a week in the DC office. The work that I was doing was a lot of coding. So I was transitioning the tool that they have into a user interface. So I was looking at all of the work that's already been developed by this really great team and transitioning that into our code and making it interactive to be more easily shared out. So my work was pretty collaborative with the 2 staff scientists that I was working with. We would do hybrid work sessions, even on the days I wasn't in office. There was a lot of collaboration with those 2 managers almost every day to talk through the tasks that I was expected to do, and also to give me updates on the work that they were doing, even outside of my own project. So something that I really enjoyed, especially working with the Washington, D.C. office, was that there's a lot of interactions between the federal government and NRDC, especially in Washington, D.C. So the scientists that I was working, or the 2 scientists that I was working under, were both doing advising for a lot of the Hill staff in DC. So they'd be taking meetings with senators and congressmen, and while I didn't get to sit in on those meetings, obviously, I had the really unique opportunity of getting those debriefs from both of my managers. I would listen to them prepare for the meetings, listen to what they were able to talk about and kind of the outtakes, and that was something that was really specific and special, I think, to the DC office, but also to NRDC in general. So that opportunity was really incredible to see those interactions between a big green nonprofit and the federal government. And I was also able to meet a lot of different people at NRDC. They're very open. Everyone's open to taking coffee chats and even just talking over lunch, even if it wasn't pre-planned. So I really recommend being able to do a hybrid work schedule or an in-person work schedule if possible, because that was one of the biggest things that I was able to do over the summer, was to connect with not only my managers and people I was working directly with, but a lot of different people at NRDC. And those are connections, whether I end up working with NRDC in the future or not, that have really shaped my perspective on where my career is going to go moving forward.
Any first questions for Bridie? We'll also have time at the end for questions as well.
I know the descriptions on the center website say that each job description has multiple locations. Is it that you're assigned a location once per position, or?
Yeah, so mine specifically said DC, or was listed as a DC position because both my managers were working in DC, but I did have the option to pick a different office if I wanted to. I chose to work in DC because I could do a hybrid work schedule with my managers. But I do think, I'm not sure if that's changed this year, but I did have the opportunity to pick which location I wanted to work at. So that could have been New York, San Francisco, or DC, I think. There you go.
Same with environmental defense funds. They're also very flexible on choosing locations. Within, reason, if your team is all in one office, they might highly suggest that you be in the office as well. Any other quick questions? Yeah.
Are you given resources to help find a place to live for 3 months?
So the Haas Center gives a lot of resources. It's not given through Schneider specifically. My managers also offered to give me connections, which was really, really great of them when I reached out to them beforehand. But the Haas Center has a lot of like lists they send out. They'll send out lists of other fellows that are going to be in your same area, so you can coordinate. There's a lot of, you do like a preemptive like survey thing or courses on Canvas ahead of time. And they also have resources there with like websites to look at and just like general tips.
The staff scientists you work with, do you know like what kind of degrees they had, what their expertise was?
Yeah, so they've both done PhDs and postdocs. In like, I think both of them had bachelors in like environmental science, or one was math, one was environmental science. Both had done PhDs in environmental science specifically. One had worked at a postdoc lab in DC. It's called the Jickery Lab, and then the other one had done a postdoc at MIT.
We'll move on, and then Brady, if you stick around, and we will have more time for questions in a little bit. So,
Valerie, I had a quick question for Brady.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many NRDC colleagues are you still in touch with since your time during the summer?
I've talked to a few of the fellows that I was like co-fellows with, both of my managers, and those are the main ones. But yeah.
Well, do you would you suggest, maybe it's a suggestion for me on how we can better continue that communication?
It's a great question. I think with managers, it comes pretty naturally. I think encouraging fellows to do more coffee chats throughout the summer is super great. I think there was a little bit of that, but yeah, really pushing that during the fellowship. I think afterwards is kind of fun to the fellow, but encouraging those connections during, I think, would be really great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I will jump in now. This is the appropriate time to share a little bit more about the one-year fellowship. In lieu of there being a representative of the one-year fellowship at the session today, I just have a little bit more information to share about the current and former alums of this fellowship, the 1 year. So the 1 year position, as you maybe figured out, always places fellows at the Natural Resources Defense Council, whereas the summer places at the NRDC as well as other NGOs. There are 4 offices that this fellowship will place fellows at: the Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and DC NRDC offices. Our current fellows that are going to be working in their roles from now until 2025, Ella Norman and David Lee, are respectively in the San Francisco and DC offices. Those are their titles down at the bottom left there. And I really like this quote. My colleague, Jessica Reynoso, who is hosting this room, and is maybe present there. Anyway, she's been doing a campaign where she's been speaking with alums of our different fellowship programs, and spoke with the 2015 fellow, Rachel, who is someone who has been working there since their fellowship. So 8.5 years later, still there advocating for emerging climate technologies. I just wanted to uplift this quote and show you the legacy of this fellowship. I could be ready for the next slide. To the point of legacy, I just wanted to highlight some figures as well. Directly after the fellows finish their 1 year, about 50% or more of fellows continue working at the NRDC. That is to say, they are offered a role after their fellowship term is ended and work there for some period of time. I think there are nearly, 8 or 10 fellows that are even still working there, some of whom started as early as 2005 when they were placed there in the role. But I know this is a big block of text, but here are other places, many of which, I would say 80% plus of which are still within the sustainability space that 1 year fellows work now. So I've went through the directory and checked off where they all are. So just wanted to give you a moment to look this over. And then we can go to the next slide. To give you a couple of highlights, the 2021 fellows, there were 4 fellows in 2021, were all flown out to Glasgow for COP26 to participate and learn at the UN Climate Change Conference there. And just this past year, or actually this year, the past year's fellows, but during this year, Annie Minondo and Bella Sullivan went to Seoul, South Korea, as part of their fellowships. They were stationed respectively in the Chicago and New York offices, so they were able to come together as a cohort of 2 and fly out to Seoul, South Korea for a week or so to participate in that conference. The text you see in the bottom right of the screen and the photo there is from their expert blog. That's a thing that if you are a fellow, a one-year fellow especially, I know this is true, working at NRDC, you get an expert blog where you get to post things about your research, the policy things you're coming up with, your collaborative work, working with supervisors, other team members, stakeholders outside of NRDC. So they have this shared blog post about their experience thinking about electric transportation and things from that conference. It was a really good experience for them. I will maybe with this on the screen still take the moment to say 2 things that are key across our fellowship programs that I seek across the board as like really strong mentorship, and that is built in to this fellowship. Fellows that come into this role, I think generally are excited about that, and I would hope you are. And mentors, supervisors know that that is part of the ask. So if you're thinking about, ooh, how am I going to do that networking? How am I going to build those connections? It's really a built-in component of it. And things like coffee chats, things like meeting your cohort mates is something that I am here to help facilitate, that Casey is here to help facilitate on the NRDC end, as well as the Haas Center more generally through different alum coffee chats that are focused on specific cities. So those are things accessible to you through these fellowships that I really hope you leverage as well. And part of what's very fun for me is that I get to introduce alums, fellows, students to one another because you have those things in common. So yes, those are key components and definitely things that I have that I'm thinking about that these fellowships have in mind is building that community for you, that professional network.
Okay.
Great. And before turning it over to Casey and then another colleague from NRDC will be joining shortly, just wanted to also point out there are other summer fellowship opportunities to explore. If you're interested in the sustainability space, there's a lot of Stanford programs, Cardinal Quarter programs that you all can participate in outside of Schneider as well. So definitely want to lift out partner programs as well. Also want to do a huge plug for the Cardinal Quarter Opportunities Fair this Friday from 12:30 to 2:30. All of these programs will be there tabling, along with all of the Haas Center programs. Another Schneider former fellow will be tabling who worked at EDF. So definitely come by. You don't have to RSVP. Just drop by Treasurer between 12:30 to 2:30. And then next week, the Door School is hosting a sustainability internship fair. So that's next Thursday as well. And most of these also will be there specifically. But for the Cardinal Quarter one, there's like other service-based summer internship opportunities there if you would like to check us out. And then I'll have Ben plug his postgrad stuff before turning it over to Casey.
Absolutely. So in terms of events, you see 1121 Hume Workshop, Fellowship App Writing. So the Hume Center for Writing and Speaking at Stanford, I have coordinated with them to hold this a session for you all to attend if you care to, that is all about helping you do the brainstorming, do the writing for fellowship applications. This is though the original seed, the original impetus is specific to the 1 year and post-grad fellowships, the Schneider included. This would really be of utility to anyone applying to any fellowship, whether that's Cardinal Quarter or otherwise. So it's over Zoom. It's going to be led by the director of the Hume Center, Xander Johnson. So I hope that you are, Sandra Jordan, excuse me. So I hope that you might be able to attend that. And then if you are in your final year, in your graduating year of an undergrad or co-term program at Stanford, or you will be in the next year or 2 or 3, I suppose, please do keep the Gardner, Ford, and Community Impact Fellowships, which are listed at the bottom of the page here, on your radar. you can do things within the sustainability space through any of these as well. They have slightly different formulas, whereas Gardner and Ford are open-ended. You would come in with ideas about how to do that work, who you would want to do that work with. Then you receive the fellowship, and then I work with you throughout the spring quarter to figure out where you're going to be placed. They're both separately endowed, so they are pretty good tools for that. I would really encourage you, if you're thinking about applying to the one-year Schneider, to also apply to one or both of those. And the Community Impact Fellowship will have a job board that'll go live in December, so you can see all the roles across different interest areas, issue areas. It'll be accessible through that. But I will pause there for now. And please reach out if you have any questions about any of those things to me directly.
And with that, I think we'll turn it over to Casey to talk a little bit more about the NRDC internship and one-year fellowship programs in particular.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'll go ahead and start with the summer internship program and sort of, I guess, the programming that we provide over the summer 12-week term. So during the 12-week term, we do have some lunch and learns from our executive leadership team that, can either be Manish Bhabna himself, the CEO of NRDC, to Molly, who runs our development side of the house, to Takora, who is our chief science officer. So you will be able to kind of learn from each of them from their perspective of the organization. NRDC is pretty large in its size. We have about 700 employees to date. So there is a lot of intersections that kind of happen on a daily basis that get really confusing to try to understand, as especially you becoming new into the organization from an intern perspective. So typically what we would like to do, or what we do, I should say, is during the onboarding process, the first few days, actually, and Bridie can attest to this, it can be a bit cumbersome because we are throwing a ton of information at you, but it's for your better experience. Not a lot of times do organizations provide you upfront, like what each division kind of does in order to kind of keep the wheels on the bus moving forward. We want to do that so that when you come into NRDC, you're a little bit more at ease rather than kind of feeling that like uncomfortable imposter syndrome of, oh my gosh, there's so many crazy things happening. I have no idea what's going on. We want you to know what's going on up front so that you have a better experience as an intern. We do a lot of office socials. To Bridie's point, we are all actually back in office now, 8 days a month. And folks starting in January will be required to be in office. So come this summer, as well as your next one-year fellowship potentially, you will have more of those sort of water cooler chats or coffee chats available to you because more people are going to be in the office. We really are thriving on, connection and collaboration so that on a daily basis, this is actively happening with our colleagues that may work in, different programs or different departments. Intern engagement activities, we're definitely kicking this up a notch by requiring the interns to also be in office. I know that we did have a few remote interns last year, which kind of took away from that experience because we did kind of have to have everything done from a remote capacity, right? So we'll still probably allow that to happen. So those who are in different offices can kind of be a part of the overall group sort of engagement activities because there are separate cohorts that do come into NRDC at different times, Schneider being the last cohort just because of the school schedule and how that irons out. But being able to sort of incorporate all of the cohorts at once. I think last year we kind of lacked a little bit on that, and Bridie can probably attest to that, but this year we've definitely seen what we can do better. So we are going to be fixing those gaps and making sure that we do have a little bit more time for the interns to gauge as a whole. We do offer like resume and like LinkedIn review workshops where we will, help review your resume as well, just from like an employer perspective. If you have any questions on like how to beef up your LinkedIn, we're here to support you from that perspective too. We are going to be having a DEI learning session on how to establish a great mentor. Mentors come in all shapes and sizes, different, ways of approaching things. You may have, a professor mentor. You may have someone at NRDC that's a mentor, and they may have, different ideas of how things are done. And they can kind of add value, in different ways. So making sure that you understand how that value can be given. We're going to have sessions on how you can sort of eyeball that and develop that over time, especially while you're during your internship. And then sort of like the qualities that we kind of look for in applicants, right? So as we're reviewing all of the resumes, cover letters, et cetera, we do receive a pretty high volume, I would say. I think last year there was like 300 total applicants or something crazy like that. So I would recommend applying right away. To Valerie's point, Ben's point, apply to as many as you want. Definitely put your preferences down there. Office locations, if there are multiple, you can choose. That is the point of that. For example, like if you have family in DC and DC is one of the location on your choice, I would definitely recommend, going to DC or what have you. But if, Chicago is one of them and you've never checked out Chicago, you could absolutely choose that as well. And then characteristics, just kind of going through a few, like, passion for environmental issues is going to be big. We want to know why you want to work at NRDC. Analytical and research type skills. We do a lot of research within NRDC to really help drive like legal policy and advocacy issues forward. Being an effective and clear communicator. So this is why we ask for those writing samples, is so that we can see how you write and how you're effectively communicating on issues. Adaptability. This one was big. We experienced a little bit of a nuanced situation last summer, and the adaptability component that interns kind of had to have really spoke volumes. And definitely was an interesting experience, to say the least. But I think we definitely overcame a lot of the issues there. And then being team oriented, right? I mean, you're constantly working with your colleagues on a daily basis. So being a team member or a team oriented team member. Project management skills, we give projects or a project plan at the start of your internship. So being able to keep in line with, those deadlines and timeframes in which your manager is expecting. And then really just be proactive, do as much as you can or get as much as you can out of this internship or fellowship. We really do establish great mentorship within NRDC, especially for those interns and fellows. So we really want you on the same side of things to take that initiative and be proactive in both your internship and fellowship. And I'll kind of pause there since my colleague Lauren Kubiak just joined. I'll allow Lauren to say a few words. She's been an internship manager for NRDC and has hosted Schneider Fellows a few times at this point. So would like to have you all hear from a manager's perspective at NRDC.
Thanks, Casey, and hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Lauren Kubiak. I'm a senior scientist on our California Climate and Energy team at NRDC. And I actually started at NRDC as a 3-month Schneider Fellow 13 and a half years ago in the New York office. So now managing Schneider Fellows is really a full circle moment. So I'll say every team that hosts a Schneider Fellow does things slightly differently, but in general, so I'm going to be speaking mostly in specifics to how the fellow that we hosted last summer integrated with our team and the types of projects that they worked on. But generally across different fellowships there, I think most managers have fellows do a couple of shorter term projects and then 1 to 2 longer term projects. So last summer, the fellow that I had was their goals for the summer were to just learn about how environmental NGOs worked and see if that was something that they wanted to do for their career after finishing school. So I wanted to, my goal for them was to make sure they were exposed to as many kind of facets of NRDC as possible. And I'm on a team that focuses on California, but I work with our power sector teams and with our industrial teams as well. So I integrated that fellow into all of our kind of weekly team meetings to make sure they were meeting people that had different portfolios as much as possible. And then the fellow that we worked with had really strong analytical skills and also really strong synthesis skills. So and at the beginning of the summer, the Air Resources Board in California had just initiated a process to update the state's cap and trade program to make sure that the cement sector was in line with cement decarbonization requirements in the state. So the first project was kind of doing a summary of all of the different comments that different stakeholder groups, including industry and other NGOs and other people watching the cap and trade program had submitted in response to the workshop, and seeing what positions different stakeholders had on those policies. And then the longer term project that this fellow worked on was an analysis of what changes would need to be made to the program to make sure that the requirements it imposed on the cement sector would lead to the cement sector reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. And so this involved a lot of modeling, a lot of reading the in-depth cap and trade legislation and statutory language. It involved kind of reaching out to the government agency to ask for clarification questions around some of the specific rules that would affect how the sector decarbonization unfolded. And then at the end of the fellowship, they presented that analysis to a pretty broad cement decarbonization coalition that I coordinate. So groups about 15 different groups to get feedback on that. And yeah, I think I'll stop there. But in general, we think of fellows as full members of our team. We have weekly lunches, go into the office twice a week, and just try and give people as much exposure to the organization as possible. And then, I guess one more thing. In terms of mentorship, there are a couple different models for this. This specific fellow, I kind of saw myself as the mentor, but there are other models where the manager can identify a different mentor to meet with a fellow on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, to make sure there are a couple different people really invested in making sure the fellow has as good of an experience as possible.
And I think we'll open up for questions. If you have questions for Casey or Lauren about the NRDC internships or the one-year program in particular, please feel free.
So you have a lot of divisions. So if someone interns find, other divisions work not more interesting, but also interesting alongside, what's described or what's applied, what intern applied, then is there any chances that, that intern can sort of expand the types of work and get involved in other, divisions work along with, what's specified at the beginning?
I can kind of take this, and Lauren, please let me know if this is not something we would normally do. I definitely understand your question. I think it's at times difficult unless it's a very close lateral program or team. So for example, Lauren is on our climate and energy team, which is very large in size. So that's why there's multiple subdivisions in climate and energy. So Lauren mentioned the power sector, right, as being one of them. So even within that power sector, there's probably multiple individuals that are made up of that group that work on those specific issues. And then industrial, right? So that's just another one as well. But we do have also even a transportation team that is also within climate and energy. So I think kind of in an office type environment, you're able to kind of explore what other sort of subdivisions within that one program are working on. I don't know necessarily that you would have an opportunity to kind of influence the type of work in actual tangible outcomes, if that makes sense. Like you could probably have a coffee chatter, something of that form or nature to kind of understand, right, what others are sort of working on. But I think the goal of the project is to really have the mentorship and collaboration within that one specific program or division to not overwhelm you, because there is so much going on at any given time.
To briefly build on that, given your interest in the summer fellowship, I imagine you might also eventually be interested in the year-long fellowship. When there is that much more time, it does become more possible to do that. My experience was that each of the outgoing fellows had more than one supervisor, and those projects sort of grew with them as they had greater insights into, they being the fellows, as the fellows grew greater insights into the kind of work that they wanted to be doing, where they felt like were growth areas for them, they were able to, through their supervisors, find more and more projects that were able to bring them to that work. So when there is more time outside of, say, the 3 months, the 10 weeks of the summer, my experience of the year-long fellows is that you are able to customize the kinds of projects and involvements and team-based you do over.
Yeah, I plus one on that. I think it's really just a time constraint, really, for the 12-week program. And what we did actually have this year is there was an extension of a Schneider Fellow, a summer Schneider Fellow, because of the work that that individual was doing, and the project isn't done yet. So we need the individual to come back, essentially.
Hi there. What is the most common feedback that you hear from the fellows, and if any, and what have been some changes as a result of that?
Yeah, I can take this one too. I would say, like to Bridie's point, right? So not everyone being in the office is kind of a bummer. I think the biggest thing with a fellowship is the networking piece. Like that is kind of a goal during the summer, is to talk and chat with as many people as possible so that there is return later. Like that is a return on your investment, is coming into NRDC, building connections, and then who knows, you could be Lauren 13 years later still working at NRDC based off a connection that Lauren made over her summer, that she was a summer fellow. And that goes for Isabella, who was a previous 1-year Schneider Fellow. She still is actually working at NRDC on another fellowship. She now lives in San Francisco. I saw her today. So that would be the biggest thing. And we've definitely done more to bring people into the office and do more in regards to like the fellowship programming and engagement. And the supervisors and managers have done very well at making sure that they're also a part of like those networking and, connecting them with other individuals within NRDC that they would not normally be able to connect with.
I'm wondering if you could speak a bit more to the research experience that you're looking for. Is it typically like preferential to one particular discipline, or is there kind of a range of like the kind of research that you would be looking for in applicants?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think I would say that definitely depends by division and manager. So like for the work that I manage and work on, analytical backgrounds, or not necessarily purely analytical, but the ability to do some analysis is helpful because a lot of the energy work we do is in numbers. So just some basic comfort and familiarity with basic modeling and numbers is helpful. But I was an Earth Systems major, and I'm comfortable with numbers, but I was more focused on writing and qualitative research. And so it can, yeah, I think at NRDC, like research skill sets of all types, and writing skills tend to be very helpful.
still here if you'd like to ask her about.
This is just very minor thing about logistics. That 1,500 travel grant,
Yeah.
should that be just spent within the internship period, or can that be slightly flexible?
So it is a little bit different the way that we wrote it into the donor grant. So if you're going to the office by public transit, you get $500 more. And then if over the summer you're going to like visit another office or go on a business trip or go to a conference, usually it's during the summer, then you can get the additional $1,000 for that. We do expect that travel to take place during the summer. We don't, can't just save it and then use it in the winter or something like that. So that's how that works. And it's quite flexible. You just tell me what you're traveling for and then, okay. Yeah, so. And I just want to clarify for NRDC, so there are 7 positions for the summer. You can rank 3. We just want to, spread the wealth because Schneider is quite popular. So as many students are able to apply as possible. So you can't rank all 7, but you can rank up to 3, which is already quite a lot. But you can apply to like all 6 organizations and rank them within their own applications. So that makes sense. Yeah.
I guess this would be a question for you.
Yeah.
Within one organization's application,
Yeah.
Does each position have its own application, or are you doing all of them?
Yeah, so the ones that require cover letter, they want a specific cover letter for each different position, which makes sense, right? Because the positions are all different and you want to speak about your strength for each position. The ones with essay, it's like you can write 1 paragraph for each position that you're applying for as well. Depends on the question. Yeah. But you don't have to write a ton. They're not looking for it. Thank you for our presenters for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Ben or me. And please come to our Quarter Fair this Friday if you want to look at different summer opportunities, 12:30 to 2:30 in President Oak. And would it be helpful if I send you all the slides? Great. Okay, I will do that. So make sure you were tapped in upfront, and I'll send you all the slides. All right. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Casey.